Imagine waking up each morning to find that the nightmare never ends. You open your eyes, but in your mind, the same regrets, fears, and what-ifs are playing on a loop, no matter how bright the sun is outside. Inside your head, everything feels dark and tangled. This is Lena's story, and it could just as easily be yours. She lived in a village straight out of a storybook. Emerald green hills glowing in the morning sun, and a river shimmering like liquid silver at dawn. But Lena noticed none of it. To her, all that beauty was seen through a foggy window. She moved through that postcard-perfect world feeling invisible and disconnected. Inside her head, a relentless trial was always underway. Lena was both the judge and the accused, and every memory became evidence against her. She replayed every awkward conversation and every missed chance on an endless loop, trying to convict herself of not being good enough. On the outside, Lena tried to act normal. She would nod and smile when spoken to, but her eyes remained distant, lost in worries only she could see. Night was even worse. She often lay awake for hours, and each morning came with a racing heartbeat and an ache deep in her chest. One morning, Lena found herself at the old village well. In the still water, she saw a gaunt, exhausted face she barely recognized as her own. A tear fell, rippling her reflection, and just then a quiet voice spoke behind her. A few paces away stood an old traveler in a faded cloak, his face leathered by sun and wind, but his eyes calm and bright. In a gentle voice, he told Lena about a sage who lived far to the north, high on a plateau, who knew how to tame a restless mind. For the first time in months, hope flickered in her chest. She knew she had to seek out this sage. Before sunrise the next day, Lena laced up her boots and began her climb toward the northern mountains. The path was steep and the dawn air bit at her cheeks, but heavier than the cold were the doubts she carried. With each step, her mind whispered that this might all be for nothing, that maybe even the sage couldn't help her. Those fears grew so loud they nearly drowned out the morning birds. Still, she kept climbing, one determined step after another. After hours of climbing, Lena finally reached a small clearing near the mountaintop. A humble wooden hut stood there, with a thin wisp of smoke curling from its chimney. On the porch sat the sage, a slender old man radiating a quiet warmth. He greeted Lena with a gentle nod and an understanding smile, as though he'd been expecting her all along. Before she could say a word, he spoke softly. "You don't need to explain why you're here. I already know." Lena's throat tightened. She had rehearsed so many pleas for help during her climb, but now all those words scattered. In a fragile voice she managed, "My mind, it won't stop. I can't turn it off." She faltered, tears of frustration brimming. The sage simply raised his hand in a kind gesture, and her words fell silent. "You don't need to force your mind to be quiet. You only need to understand how it works." He slowly rose to his feet. "Come, there's something I want to show you." He led her into a small garden behind the hut. Not a single leaf stirred, the place was utterly still. In the center stood a stone table with a wooden tray on top. On the tray sat 3 smooth stones stacked into a shaky little tower. They looked ordinary, yet they were presented as if they held some hidden importance. The sage pointed to a flat boulder at the edge of the clearing. "Walk to that rock and back, and carry this tray with you. Just don't let the stones fall."
Lena blinked, unsure if she had heard right. Such a simple task? She had expected a riddle or a ritual, not a balancing act with a tray. But the sage's patient smile told her that this was no joke. This was the lesson. Steadying herself with a deep breath, Lena carefully picked up the tray with both hands. The stones wobbled slightly, and she adjusted her grip to keep them balanced. Then she took her first cautious step. As soon as she moved, the stones teetered and her heart lurched. Her first instinct was to hurry and get it over with, but she knew a sudden move would send the stones crashing, so she forced herself to slow down. She steadied her trembling hands and eased her foot forward gently.
Each step became a tiny ritual. Lena placed her foot down softly, almost asking the earth permission to take the next step. Her shallow, rapid breaths began to deepen and sync with her movements. Step, inhale, step, exhale. She found a natural, calming rhythm. Then something extraordinary happened. The rest of the world simply fell away. All that existed for Lena was the tray in her hands, the stones balanced on top, the next careful step, and her own steady breathing. For the first time in years, her mind wasn't reliving yesterday or worrying about tomorrow. It was just here, utterly still. Almost before she realized it, Lena reached the boulder. She turned around carefully, keeping her eyes on the stones, and made her way back with that same slow grace. Each footfall was as gentle as the last. Back at the table, Lena set the tray down softly. Not a single stone had fallen. Her hands were trembling, but not from fear. This time, it was quiet amazement. Tears rolled down her cheeks as something heavy within her unwound at last. The sage quietly watched her. After a moment, he asked, "When you were walking, did you hear any birds singing?" Lena paused and thought. In that bubble of concentration, she hadn't noticed anything but her task. "No," she said softly. "I only heard my footsteps and my breathing." The sage smiled. "That is the secret," he said. "Your mind can only hold one thing at a time. When you give it one simple thing to focus on, like keeping those stones balanced, there's no room for anything else. In that moment, all your old regrets and future worries vanish." Lena sank slowly to her knees, overwhelmed. "All this time," she whispered, "I thought my mind was an enemy I had to fight." She looked at the little tower of stones, but it just needed something simple to do, here in the present. The sage rested a hand on her shoulder. "Peace isn't hiding in some far-off place," he said gently. "It's in each breath, each step you take in this very moment. We tear ourselves apart by dwelling on yesterday and stressing about tomorrow. But bring your mind to now, and you'll find now is enough." He gestured toward the tray of stones. "Your mind is like this stack of stones," he continued. "Pile too many thoughts on at once, memories, fears, plans, and it wobbles under the weight. But focus on just one thing in the here and now, and your mind becomes steady, unshakable." Lena let his words sink in. She opened her palms, recalling how they had trembled at the start of this exercise and how steady they became when she focused. She had spent so long searching for a big cure for her overthinking, but the answer turned out to be small enough to hold in her own hands. She gave a soft, amazed laugh. It was here the whole time, wasn't it? Lena stayed with the sage that night, practicing her newfound focus. They did everything slowly and with full attention, from washing a cup to walking in the garden under the moon. With each fully present moment, more of the chaos in her mind fell away. At sunrise, Lena thanked the sage and began her journey back down the mountain. But the woman who descended was not the same one who had climbed up. Her steps were light and sure now. She noticed the solid earth under her feet and the golden sunlight on the dew, all the things she hadn't noticed before. The world hadn't changed, but she had. Did her old worries try to return? Of course they did. But now Lena had a way to handle them. Whenever her thoughts began to spiral, she stopped and grounded herself in the present by focusing on something simple: the warmth of water on her hands, the sound of her steady breathing, the feel of her feet on the earth. Soon, the anxious spin would slow and disappear. That night, back in her own bed, Lena fell into the most peaceful sleep she'd had in years. In the days that followed, she smiled more and worried less. She was more present with the people she loved. Nothing about the world around her had changed, but Lena had. The fog in her mind had lifted, revealing a simple truth: peace had been waiting in the present all along.